Happy Devils Wednesday. This is the State of the Fan Address, episode 217. I'm your host, Sam Wu, here with Nick Villano of pucksandpitchforks.com. Coming to you live from the Primetime Radio Studios in the dense fog of North Jersey and South Jersey, an undisclosed location in the bunker. Streaming live on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, Twitter Live, and Twitch on the Let's Go Devils Network. Tonight's title is Bratt and Meier, our priority number one. That's right. Nick, how are you, my friend?
Listen, it's buzzing, right? Everybody's talking about Jesper Bratt and Timo Meier. It's the middle of the Stanley Cup final. The Panthers are having a rough start of it, but it's busy, man. Like it's wild that 32 Thoughts started today with the Damon Severson news that apparently Columbus was the team trying to trade for his rights right before they traded for Provorov. Terrible trade for Columbus. Applaud them for continuing to be a bottom dweller in the Metropolitan Division. I appreciate you sticking around there. Love it for you. Love it.
Wow.
Giving away first-round picks for terrible defensemen with whatever. Anyway, not a Blue Jackets podcast. If this was, I'd be depressed. I hope Johnny Hockey is happy, though. Remember how excited he was that the Blue Jackets called him?
I got to tell you, how do you mix Babcock and Johnny Hockey together?
Oh, I bet you he's counting his blessings. He's not on this Devils team with Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier, who was just the third best team in the NHL. He is counting his blessings. What a great life he's living.
Do you think Johnny Hockey was like, oh, I don't have to worry about Mike Babcock, after signing last season?
I mean, did anybody think they had to worry about playing for Mike Babcock ever again? Like, imagine. And, listen, old habits die hard. I bet you he learned his lesson, and it'll be better for the first year, but those bad habits will creep in again. Change is as change does. But I will say this. Let's go back to Bratt and Meier, and we're going to talk to Jackie Spiegel, to Marci Rubin today. We have two great guests. Can't wait to talk to both of them, and we're going to talk about the Bratt and Meier situation with both of them because it's incredibly relevant. It's all that anybody's really talking about when it comes to Devils hockey. And I'm going to say this before we talk to Jackie. Paciente. The Bratt deal is apparently on the table for 8 years. I don't think he wants 8 years, so they're going to go back and forth in that. The Meier deal, they haven't even started talking, which is nutso to me. That's the part that's crazy. How did Tom Fitzgerald not be like, Claude Lemieux, sit your butt down the second we traded for you, and what's the framework of the deal that you want? But I guess that's not how it works, because Ray Shero was the same way. He kept taking Taylor Hall out to dinner and kept telling us, well, we didn't talk money. Well, what are you talking about? How are you not talking about money every single? I'd see him in the hallway, be like 8 years, 7.5. Yeah. Every single time I saw Timo Meier, I'd be like, money. Let's talk money. But that's just me. Sam, let's bring on our guests. Let's get the experts to talk to me.
Yes, we have Jackie Spiegel, deputy editor of Express US Sport. You can find her on Twitter at JackieSpiegel93. Coming to you from New York City. Jackie, you are on with Sam and Nick. How are you tonight?
I'm all right, guys. I'm coming to you from smoky New York City. It's a little, got a little bit of the smoke from the wildfires. Yeah. It's been a little interesting the last couple of days. But thanks for having me on. It's great to be back.
Glad to see the walkers didn't get to you.
I don't know. Is that? Yeah, I don't know I was always trying to think what movie is this from? Because it was orange earlier today on the sky. So it's been a little interesting. Not many people on the street right now. I just looked out the window and it's pretty empty out there. A little COVID-like.
It looks pretty wild in New York City. But speaking of orange, the Philadelphia Flyers made a huge move, making the trade sending Provorov to the Columbus Blue Jackets. Kings are involved, so they could send Gavrikov. It's just a wild deal. First domino of the season or the offseason. So I wanted to ask, do you see that this – first of all, tell me, who do you think won? Who do you think won the trade?
I think it's easy to say that it's the Flyers. I think,
unfortunately.
I mean, most importantly, they got that, first round pick for this year. And how many times have we said it's a deep draft? Like, this is the year that no matter who you pick especially in that first round, you're getting a star kind of thing. I mean, there's so many guys that are just great, that'll fill roster spots, that will do great things at the NHL level. So I think, looking at that, looking at getting Sean Walker, looking at Cal Peterson, like, they went out there and they filled some needs that I think they have. Obviously, Walker is a UFA next year, and Peterson kind of struggled a little bit. He lost his number. He lost his spot with the Kings, but it doesn't mean he can't rebound. He was a good goalie before this past season, so who knows what could happen? But I think looking at it, especially with that first round pick, I would say the Flyers won absolutely.
Yeah, I'm honestly floored. I can't believe that and that's a good pick, 22nd. Like, that's not far off. The Devils got Mercer at 18. Like, this isn't like there's good players in that realm. So I don't know. But let me ask you about like the overall impact on the league. Do you think that this is going to like be a domino? Do you think there's going to be a lot more trades now coming now that the first one has been had, or do you think this is just kind of like an early outlier?
Well, I always love how the NHL functions, because I always feel like once that first coach gets axed, all of a sudden everyone's like, oh, we got to reassess and get rid of our guy kind of thing. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case here, to be honest with you. But I think we all expected there to be some big moves this offseason. We know that the salary cap's not going to go up much. It's only going to go up about $1 million maybe kind of thing. With that, Gary Bettman said recently, was speaking to the media during the during the Stanley Cup final. So there's guys that deserve contracts. There's good UFAs. There's good RFAs. There's guys that are expiring contracts next year. That guys, we all know the core four has those no moves and no trades kind of worked into their contracts, where they might be moved that they can't be moved this upcoming season, but they could be moved before then, kind of before July 1st. So it wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot of moves actually during draft day, or both draft days, I should say.
Yeah, and let's talk about the Devils offseason. Obviously, this is the Let's Go Devils podcast. We hear a lot about Bratt and Meier. It's pretty much what everybody's talking about, especially since Pierre LeBrun and Elliot Friedman talked about it today. So, is that like the top pick on the offseason for them to like take care of, or is there another thing that you think would be considered like their most important decision to make this offseason?
Well, those two guys are definitely keys for this team, right? You don't get Timo Meier without wanting to keep him around long term. And, I will say that NHL.com, Mike Zeisberger wrote a story yesterday, I believe it was, talking to Tom Fitzgerald. And he did say that the plan was always not to discuss money during the season. He wanted him to get comfortable, learn the system, be around the guys kind of thing. And then he said that now, according to the article, they're going to start talking this week. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's some movement in that regard. We'll see, kind of thing. I know Tom's heading down for games 3 and 4 of the Cup final because his son, Casey, is on the Panthers. But the plan was always to kind of, according to the story, the plan was always to kind of go this route where they wouldn't discuss things until the season ended. Now the question is obviously, what does Meier get? We know his numbers weren't great during the playoffs. He didn't have a great, he had some decent numbers when he came over, but then things kind of stalled a little bit. And we saw that with a couple of the guys on the Devils. So I think he's still going to get the money that he deserves and he's earned over the course of his career. And I wouldn't be surprised if they lock him up long term. But you'll probably see some movement in that coming up. But while there's those two guys, I think the biggest question mark is what do you do with Mackenzie Blackwood? He is an RFA, so you got to figure out like what you want to do with him. Do you sign him? Do you keep him around? I mean, I think we all saw Vanacek did a good job. Kira Schmid, like the two of them weren't terrible. No? You disagree?
Goodbye.
Peace
Just
out.
cut him. I actually wrote about this yesterday. So it's very top of mind to me. The big issue with Blackwood, because I thought like when you look at his average annual value, it's only $2.8 million. So I thought that they could qualify him, play the trade market, maybe like assess take on some of that money and trade him for like a 3rd round pick or something, like try to get that asset value back. But the last year of his contract is worth I think like 4.2. And that's just too much money. Nobody's going to give him $4.2 million to see if he could be the player he once was. So I think the Devils are just going to cut ties. That's what I personally think they're going to do. Not even qualify him.
You have Vanacek and you have Schmidt, and they both were a good tandem, I thought, to a degree. I mean, look, we don't know because it's such a small sample size with each of them with the Devils, especially Schmidt being a rookie. But you have those guys. There's obviously the talk about Connor Hellebuck being on the market and moving out of Winnipeg. And I mean, you can't argue with the Connor Hellebuck, right? What he's done in Winnipeg has been, the man faces the most shots. I think it is like pretty much every season that he plays. So, and he still puts up fantastic numbers. The question is, what do you give up for him kind of thing? It's a big question mark, the goaltending situation. I feel like the Devils, kind of been that way maybe since Marty Brodeur left to a degree. There's always a question mark about what to do with the Devils right now in terms of goaltending. But yeah, I mean, obviously Timo Meier and Jesper Bratt are like the top two guys that you got to sign.
Yeah. And listen, there was like 2 good years of Corey Schneider in there where he was like stupendous, but the team was terrible. So you just never got like on the same page where you had a good goalie with a good team. So I agree. Once you finally get a good goalie on a good team, and say what you want about Vanacek, he's at least like a top 20, top 25 goalie, and like the Devils haven't had that in a long time. So, it's great to finally get that. You talked about Hellebuck, and that just kind of like jumps right into my next point about just this offseason. And if the Devils are primed to make a big move, they've made a big move every year since Shero took over. They've been making, the PK Subban move, the Dougie Hamilton move. Last year, they go all in on Johnny Gaudreau. When they lose him, they get John Marino and Andre Palat. So they're always going after these big players. So ironically, the only time they didn't make a big move in an offseason under Shero and Fitzgerald is 2018 when they made the playoffs. So kind of looking at everything Fitzgerald has done and kind of like his MO. You just talked to him not too long ago, and we'll get into that in a second. But what do you think he's going to do? Do you think he's going to make another blockbuster trade, go after somebody big in free agency? Like, I think Michael Button makes sense, but I don't know if the money is going to work. What do you think the Devils are going to do here?
It's always hard to gauge, right? They have so many players that they need to sign. They have 8 RFAs, 5 UFAs, and that's not even, I don't even think, if I remember correctly, that even counts like the minor league guys that you got to get under contract that might have 2 ways kind of deal.
That's the NHL guys.
Yeah, so you have like 34 million, according to Cap Friendly, it's about 34 million of cap space. So there are things to do, but like I said, you have guys you want to resign or you have to resign. Like obviously Timo Meier is going to eat a good chunk of that. Jesper Bratt is going to eat a good chunk of that. So the question is like, what do you do then? And the Devils, though, I mean, look, this is a really good team. I mean, yes, they lost to the Hurricanes in the second round. Okay, great, that's fine, but they are a really good team. They're a young team, and they're still building like their identity and who they are. I mean, you can't argue when you have Jack Hughes and you have Dawson Mercer, and you have Dougie Hamilton on the blue line, and you have all the kids in the minors. You have Al, who really didn't get a lot of time in the NHL yet, and you have I'm going to probably say his name completely wrong, but it's this Simon Nemetz guys.
Nemetz, no, you got it.
All right, cool. Well, so then you have him and you have Luke Hughes, who will now step into the lineup full time and have a full season. It's hard to say if they should even go out and get a big name. What would be the addition? Would it be a third or fourth liner, a middle 6 guy? What would be what would you be getting? And what do you want? What are you going to have to give up?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of routes that I think they can go. Basically, they have to decide whether if they don't. It doesn't sound like they're re-signing Damon Severson. Doesn't sound like Ryan Graves is coming back. You got to decide how much you're paying Haula, because it sounds like everybody wants Haula to come back. And you got to decide whether you bring back Tatar. If you're not bringing back Tatar, you have enough money to make a $3 to $5 million move. And who is that move? There's interesting cases to be made. Like personally, I would love to get Ryan O'Reilly. I don't think that he's signing with the Devils for that price. He'd sign with the Maple Leafs for that price, but he's not signing with the Devils for that price. So, you kind of have to play around with what's realistic, what makes sense. And the one thing that they can't do, and I am going to write an article about like the 5 moves they can't make, and they're going to be very general, but we've seen like with teams like Vancouver, you can tank this very quickly. You could go from the young team that's going to win multiple Stanley Cups to blow it up in 2 seasons. Like it could go very badly very quickly.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you got to remember, I think the issue with Vancouver was Jim Benning basically sitting there and be like, we're going to resign Jacob Markstrom. We're going to bring back, Chris Tanev, and then not. And I think that really impacted that team more than anyone expected. Yes, Bubble Demko was fantastic. We all know that. But that was, again, kind of like the Akira Schmidt thing. That was a very small sample of what Demko could do. And it was a very controlled environment that those guys were in at the time. Playing, it was just such a weird environment also, if you're really looking back, kind of thing. Yeah. So it's the Vancouver Canucks, they're a great example to a degree, because I also think Quinn Hughes struggled once Chris Tanev was not on the team. He was his defensive partner. He helped basically said to, Quinn kind of go do your thing kind of thing. You know what I mean? And it's hard to, I kind of know where you're going with it, but I think it's a little, I don't think Tom Fitzgerald is going to be saying he's signing, a Jacob Markstrom, vehemently saying he's signing a Jacob Markstrom and then not signing a Jacob Markstrom kind of thing, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and they are kind of in that position because they got Bratt, who, told every reporter, I'm coming back, you're stuck with me. They got Meier, who, Fitzgerald was like, yeah, we made this move for the long term. I want long-term pieces. If he trades one of them, that's going to go weird in the locker room, right? Like you said, especially if he picks Meier over Bratt. That's where things are going to get real weird because Bratt's been here the whole time.
Maybe. You never know. I mean, I haven't been in the room in a while. I haven't been around the team fully, so I can't tell you what maybe the locker room feel is in terms of, you have your glue guys and the guys that kind of keep the room together. But if they do end up trading Meier now, it might not, I'm not saying they should, and I'm not saying that they will. I'm just saying you would think that if let's say they can't get agreement between now and before July 1st, they're going to try and make a move to get something, and they would probably get a good return, kind of like what they gave up to get him. I don't know who would have the pieces necessarily to do that. But it's not I don't think anything's ever off the table anymore in the NHL with the way the cap is and the way contracts are and moving guys and the no moves and the no trades that come up later in contracts. Tom Fitzgerald's a very good GM. I think he has a game plan whichever way it goes. And I will say we did not talk Devils when I spoke with him recently, so I don't know what his plans are. But I will, I think he has a game plan regardless of what happens.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think that they, I've known some people who've been in those rooms, and I kind of know how, they have, it's almost like if you take a spreadsheet and you put it on a whiteboard, that's kind of like how they look at the offseason and the draft. There's 2 different whiteboards, one with NHL players, one with the prospects. It's very interesting, kind of how those things work. I will say the one thing that the Devils got going for them is that their star, Jack Hughes, seemed to be very business orientated. He doesn't seem to have they all go out, they all have fun, they're young and they're kind of in the same age group, but he looks at it like a business, and he already signed an 8x8 contract. He could have held out and waited for, if he signs this offseason, what's that look like? A 10, 12? What does a Jack Hughes contract look like this offseason? So he signed for less than, what he could have if he had waited. And I think he kind of expects his teams to do the same. So maybe you're right. Maybe in the room, it doesn't matter. It's not going to be like Vancouver where there's a lot of hurt feelings, a lot of people who lose trust in the process because if something goes wrong.
Yeah, I do think today's NHL also understands it as a business, and they understand that, it's not that trades and moves and not signing guys is never personal at this point. It's really, we need to fit a certain number. We need to fit a certain salary cap. We need to look to the future, make sure that fits moving forward in the years to come. Hopefully the cap, they were talking about that it should rise. We'll see. Obviously, I think every year is dependent on that year kind of thing. But I think every NHL today really understands this. It's a business, and guys get moved. Your best friend might be gone tomorrow. He might stick around, but I think everyone kind of knows that. Hey, look, I still have to go out there and do my job.
I kind of want to ask you a quick question because you brought up the 2020 bubble, and I'm just curious of what your thought is. because I was covering the Tampa Bay Lightning at that point. I was doing broadcast news in Tampa, and we covered it from a very far, no home games. It was very strange. But the one thing that I kept bringing up when I was talking about it is that they can't talk about 2019. Reporters can't ask them about, do you think that you're going to blow it? Do you think that you got swept by Columbus last year? Nobody could talk about that, and then Tampa won it all. Do you think that had anything to do with it? Do you think that they thrived better in that environment because there was no pressure? They didn't have to think about the year before. They just went out and played hockey with this stupendous star-studded team.
It's not a bad thought, to be honest. There were people in the bubble, but you were doing Zooms, kind of thing. Yeah. And you were talking to the media. That's a really, I don't know. That's a great question. I mean, I think that's something to really ask maybe like a John Cooper or, like one of the, like a Stamkos kind of guy. There was different things in the bubble that impacted players. Like we all know, right? A lot of guys have talked about it, being isolated, being away from family, being, kind of grouped together. And it's, and guys towards the end, even like those last two teams, that it was hard to be kind of segregated from everybody. You're in your own little world in that hotel. And they also missed the fact that they didn't have their family there, kind of thing. So which is what the playoffs is all about. I mean, how many times have we seen teams flying, staff and family on their planes to go to a, potential cup game? I don't know. That's a great question. If it kind of took the pressure away, but they all talk about how weird it was being in the bubble too, and not having crowd noise and fans and like the goal siren go off and it's like there's nobody cheering kind of thing. I mean, it's a great question. It might be something to bring up this year, to just ask the question moving forward. But I think it's hard to say.
I'm curious, and you know what, because it was weird. Because by the time it was still very pandemic-y outside, is what I say the entire time. Because even the next year, they did the boat parade. It was fun, but it was very you also didn't want to pine into those hard questions. We were in the middle of a pandemic and they were winning it. They were on the way to the Stanley Cup. Something positive was happening in Tampa. So we didn't want to bring it down, but now that's a good point. I've written guest articles around different fan-sided sites before. So maybe I'll do one on the Lightning. Cause I'm just very curious and I do have that access still. So maybe I'll jump into a press conference randomly and ask that question. Cause I'm curious, that changes history. A dynasty doesn't exist if they don't win that first one. So, but I want to talk about this piece you wrote for Express US Sport. You talked to Tom Fitzgerald. He was very prominent in your article about the 1996 Panthers. Just everybody knows the story. They killed a rat. Or somebody killed a rat in the outside the locker room. That became the mascot, so to say, for the Panthers for the rest of that season. People were throwing rats on the ice. They made the run to the Stanley Cup final as this way, way underdog team. So I want to ask you, what was your favorite Fitzgerald quote on this piece?
Oh, there was a lot. Tom's a great quote, right? He provides a lot of insight. And I also enjoyed the fact, I don't know if you could tell, I have a very heavy Brooklyn accent at times, especially. And Tom with his Boston accent. It was, but one thing that didn't make the article that I thought was kind of funny and interesting was actually, he played for this Panther team and then he went to the Avalanche at one point, and he said that Patrick Roy made a comment to them because they touched the trophy. Right. They touched the Prince of Wales. They touched the trophy when they won, because the response was you won this, you earned this, touch it. Don't be afraid to touch it kind of thing. And he also commented that when he was with the Penguins, Mario was very adamant about touching the trophy kind of, because he was the owner, touching the trophy kind of thing. So, but he said that when he went to Colorado, Patrick Roy said to him, "Oh, well, we saw you touch the trophy. So right away, we knew we had you." Kind of, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but that was it was just and Tom's seriously, he's you had a great team kind of thing. So he's that's what did it, because we touched the trophy. That's why we lost. But yeah, there was a lot of great things from Tom. He talked a lot about how important this, the Florida Panther organization is to him, how it made him an everyday, he's an everyday player with the Islanders, but it really helped solidify his career kind of thing, playing for the Panthers. He has a lot, he's going down there to not only obviously root on his son and root on Matthew Tkachuk, who's a family member as well, but he has like a very strong connection to the Panthers organization because they gave him a lot. Like he wasn't too happy. I'm sure as you read in probably the article, he wasn't not happy at all being made available in the expansion draft. He was told originally by the Islanders.
I didn't realize. I didn't know the Islanders lied to him.
He basically said that they told him that they were not, that he was going to be protected. And then next thing you know, like the night before, they're like, just kidding, kind of thing. So, which I thought was kind of interesting too. Like how, but I mean, I think we saw that recently with the expansion draft, like, with a couple of guys, I mean, and like he said, like expansion drafts were very different back then than they are now. But he did make a point that, Bob Clark was the GM at the time, which I don't think many people remember either. I always think of Bill Torrey as being like the architect of, I mean, he's architect of the Islanders, obviously, but he also was like the guy who, did things with the Panthers. But yeah, so he said like, Bob Clark made sure that he got like really good people and really, hard workers. And, as I mentioned in the story as well, like I talked to Dave Lowry, who was on that team and Mr. Playoff, obviously in the playoffs that year. But, he even said, like, we sat around the table and we're all like, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you kind of thing. But it was all out of respect because they liked how they played. And they appreciated how each other played. So I thought that was kind of important.
Yeah, that's great. I'm curious, like, why did you make this, like, how did this come about? Why did you make this your first piece coming out of the gate?
Well, I think it's a little relevant to right now. With the Panthers
that's fair. That's fair. Did you like the 96 team? Was that something that was always in your head, or were you just like Panthers? Let's talk to the 96 team.
Well, as someone who's a little older, I did obviously, I actually really liked the Panthers that year. I mean, look, they had a great logo. I actually have a puck on my desk at the office from that with that cat logo. And I liked that. I like Doug McLean. I thought he was a great coach back then. They had good players, Bill Lindsay and Brian Scrudland and, obviously Dave Lowry and Scott Mellenby. Scott Mellenby was the one who killed the rat, by the way, in the locker room.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I talked to every single one of them. And the thing that stands out from that is that the rat was the size of a cat and how they were not your normal size cats at the Miami Arena back in the day. So, yeah, so, I just thought it was kind of, relevant to today. And yeah, I actually vividly remember the Uwe Krupp goal, that it was just this absolute, like, out of nowhere, throw it on the net kind of thing that just happened to get through. And it was in like 3 overtimes. And I don't know, it was 96, right? So I was like maybe 16, 17 and watching it and staying up late, like, who knows what time, I can't remember what time it was. And, but it was definitely after midnight kind of thing. And yeah, I mean, being like, oh my God, I can't believe it's ending on this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And obviously John Van Beesbrook, from, New York, obviously. And John Van Beesbrook was a Rangers goalie. So I would, and he had the cool mask, right?
Yeah. I mean, John Van Beesbrook is somebody he's hard to hate. He's just one of those, even as a Devils fan, he's hard to hate. But yeah, I mean, listen, it's a great piece. If you haven't read it, it's on my Twitter. At Pucks and Pitchforks Twitter. It's also at Jackie Spiegel 93. Check it out there, or just go to Express US Sport. Make sure you check out the front page. It's right there. Go see it. Great article. Jackie, do you have anything else coming up that you'd like to promote? What else you got going on at Express US Sport or anywhere else?
We have our official hard launch tomorrow, actually. So we'll be officially out there. Yeah. So we've obviously have stories up, but tomorrow's the official hard launch. So, yeah, tomorrow's hey, we're here kind of thing. We're brand new. Yeah, we're brand new. And then in July, towards the end of July, we'll have the Mirror, also an American version of the Mirror, which is, so the Express and the Mirror are obviously both UK publications, and we are the American version of those kind of things. So, the Express is up now. We'll have the Mirror up towards the end of July too.
Love that. So we'll definitely keep an eye out for all that content that you're putting out. We love that you're writing again. It's a good time to have Jackie Spiegel back on the scribe. Love to see that. But Jackie, love having you on. We're gonna have you on again soon. Let us know when you have a big piece, and let us know when you get Tom to talk about maybe some Devil stuff. We'll have you on again.
Oh, he was great. Yeah, he was great, and I appreciate it. Yeah, well, a lot of good stuff coming down the pike for sure.
Great stuff. Thank you so much, Jackie.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Jackie. That's Jackie Spiegel, deputy editor of Express U.S. Sport. Official launch tomorrow at lunchtime. Looking forward to that.
Lunchtime reading. You need some lunchtime reading in your life. And you know what, Sam? I look at the numbers of pucksandpitchworks.com, and between those hours of 9 and 3, we're doing numbers. So people, they don't want to work. They want to read. Go read Jackie. Go read the rest of the Express U.S. Sport team. It's been a soft launch, and now they're launching hard tomorrow. Go check them out. I love that. You know what, Sam? Here's the thing: is that Jackie's a friend, and she's been working for other companies kind of behind the scenes, so we haven't had her on in a little bit. But the second I saw that she was back on the Scribe, I was like, "Hey, Jackie, let's talk Devils again." So great interview as per usual. Love having her on. I love that.
I want to.
I don't know what else to say. I had a point, but I lost it.
I want to add my 2 cents here.
Okay.
When you told me tonight's guest roster, I was like, oh, we haven't had her in a while. Okay, good friend of the podcast. And then also, I didn't realize Jackie and I are about the same age. Yeah, I was a big fan of that Florida Panthers team back in the mid-'90s. Jovo Kopp, Ed Jovanovski was also on that team. That Florida Panthers team was just kind of like one of those, like a little bit like the Miracle on Ice. Like you wouldn't expect even back in those days. I mean, what the Kraken and the Golden Knights have done, they've taken it to a whole new level. But the rules, the expansion draft, is so different now than it was back then. And basically, you were like Mr. Irrelevant. You filled up a team, a roster, 20 Mr. Irrelevants, and then suddenly they came together, and you couldn't help but cheer for them. They were like the Devils, because the Devils were the underdogs the previous Stanley Cup, the previous year, and throwing the Rats on the ice, and you're talking about South Florida. A lot of fans just starting to get into hockey. I mean, they were throwing the Rats prematurely. They thought it was a goal, and then it would just delay the whole game. And there were so many of these like little rats, out in the ice, and and that what came from that, even though it was Scott Mellamy, it was the year before the octopus being out in the ice. And then I noticed how biased some of the commentating was, because it's okay for Detroit to do it, but God forbid a Sun Belt team, Florida Panther fan throw a plastic rat on the ice.
Here's the thing, Sam.
What?
Hockey is so bad with gatekeeping.
Yeah.
Like so bad. And like there's some serious like transgressions with it that, you and me are not going to solve, so we don't need to talk about it, but even like the light, like how many people were belly aching when it was Panthers and Hurricanes in the Eastern Conference Final, and now it's Knights and Panthers, 2 non-traditional NHL teams. Like, there's no legacy, nobody's gonna watch. Man, they're doing millions of people on air and on streaming. Like TNT put out the numbers, and everybody's mad that it's on TNT. It's not on traditional cable or whatever. Traditional, it's not on ABC or NBC or any everybody's belly aching, Sam. If people want to watch the Stanley Cup, they want to watch good games. They want to watch characters. They want to watch drama. That is Matthew Tkachuk. That is the Vegas Golden Knights. That is Jack Eichel. That is Mark Stone. This is stars. That's what you need in the Stanley Cup Final is stars. It doesn't matter where they play from. If Austin Matthews goes to Arizona, Sam, people are going to watch Arizona. Yeah. I guarantee you people are going to start watching Arizona. That's like Colorado was probably considered a non-traditional market until they got Joe Sakic and Peter Forsberg and Patrick Waugh and Milan Hajduk. And I know I'm jumping to a different...
Well, actually, they had them before, most of those guys before they relocated.
I understand. But I'm just saying, But I'm saying you don't like Colorado, would be in the dirt if they didn't have the stars, or they would be, just like they would be made fun of like Carolina, like, I mean, like Carolina themselves, like they had stars, like Ron Brendamore's a star and Cam Ward, but they didn't have like stars, like Hall of Famer stars, because Brendamore didn't make the Hall of Fame yet, right?
I don't think so, but he should be in there.
Yeah, listen, I was against it, but I think that's because, like, I think that him and Elias were kind of the same, and I don't think Elias is going to get in. But yeah, I mean, because I think Elias should get in. So
it just depends what year it is for Elias. I mean, if
we're gonna get into a Hall of Fame debate, like McGillney, like what are we doing? How is McGillney still not in? That's just like, this is just dumb.
You know what? I don't know. I think the whole Hall of Fame thing was dumb. Since that whole Pat Burns incident where, the guy's dying. He obviously had the credentials then. You couldn't do it when he was alive. And then you do it after he passes? Like, I didn't understand that. Did not understand that.
We got to get Stan Fisher. We got to start the movement again. How do we do this? Who do we have to call? We get Stan Fischler, the Maven, Hall of Maven. I need the Hall of Maven to happen, Sam. Sam, if Stan Fisher gets in the Hall of Fame, I'm going.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're going to have to figure a way how to get into that building.
We've had at least one Hall of Famer on this podcast.
Well, you know what? I think I know who. We'll talk off air. I think we're going to have to start bribing some of these voters. You're going to have to.
Let's go.
Who
are the voters? Is it media people?
I think it starts with the Professional Hockey Writers Association, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's Frank Saravalli. I think that's where it starts.
They don't make a lot of money.
Stop it. We're just kidding around about bribing. But, I mean, that should be a huge consideration. I don't know why. Stan was ahead of his time years ago with his reporting. Thank you, Michael. He says I'm a Hall of Famer. No.
Aww.
No. I don't belong in the Hockey Hall of Fame. Absolutely not.
Yeah, you're a Hall of Famer in our heart, Sam.
That's all I care about. But anyway, getting back to Jackie Spiegel and all that, and the Sun Belt teams. You know what I thought of today? I thought of this just out of nowhere. Randy McKay is indirectly responsible, and Bill Guerin are indirectly responsible why we have Timo Meier today.
Why?
Did you know that? This is where I figure it out, because I love it's almost like going back through a family tree in a way. Well, Bill Guerin was traded for Jason Arnott. Jason Arnott and Randy McKay were traded.
Oh, you're doing the trade tree.
Yep, for Jamie Langenbrunner.
We actually did this piece. We didn't go back as far as Bill Guerin, though. We went as far back as Jason Arnott.
Yeah.
So that is on Pucks and Pitchfork.
That's linked to Timo Meier?
Yeah.
Oh, you did? Oh, okay.
Yeah. I think Charlie did it. I think Charlie Borges. So I think we linked him to Shakir Mukhamadullin, and then we updated it.
What? Yeah, because, let me explain it for the people that don't know.
Okay.
So they traded for Jamie Langenbrunner and Joe Nieuwendyk, and then eventually Jamie Langenbrunner was shipped off back to Dallas for that third-round pick, which that third-round pick turned out to be Blake Coleman. Then Blake Coleman was traded, which got the Vancouver pick, right? And Nolan Foote, and then that became Mukhamadullin, which then got shipped off, and now it's Timo Meier.
Yeah.
So when we had Randy McKay on, I should have known that. But, that was out of nowhere.
When did you have Randy McKay on?
Oh, you didn't know about it? We had Randy McKay on Game 4 against the Hurricanes for Game Day Live, and then he was waiting for Uber. He was waiting for Uber at American Whiskey for Devils After Dark, and I was like, Randy, why don't you come over? you want to come over? He's like, sure. And then he walked on and surprised Scotty, and then Scotty was in like dreamland and, stargazing, and yeah.
That's wild. I loved Randy McKay. He was my second favorite next to Bobby Holik, who I've been trying to get on this podcast for a while.
He's not doing it.
I gave up for a little while, but he just did a podcast episode for somebody else. So now I'm back on the hunt. So you got to what are you doing? Get me one of these guys. I've gotten you a lot of guests. Get me a guest. I just had a baby, Sam.
All right, I'll get a guest. Actually, I'll get a guest right now. She writes for pucksandpitchforks.com.
This doesn't count. This does not count.
Oh, come on. She's in the Andy Green room right now. You just ruined my spot.
Just get the guest.
Okay. Her name is Marci Rubin. She writes for pucksandpitchforks.com. One of my favorite new writers. You can find her on Twitter at Marci_Rubin15. Marci, you're on with Sam and Nick. How are you tonight?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
We're doing well. And Marci, you're also writing for the fan-sided front page, writing NHL content. So you're hitting it from all. And do you write for a Yankee site as well? Did I see that?
I'm doing coverage on the fan-sided homepage for MLB also, but I mostly focus on Yankees. I'm a big Yankees fan. But yeah, doing some MLB stories, some NHL stories, and then focusing on the Devils with Pucks and Pitchforks. So I've been doing it for about a month now. It's been awesome.
Love to hear that. We love to hear that. Let's jump right in because there's a lot to talk about, and let's jump right into Bratt and Meier because that's all we got. That's all we can talk about. The name of the show tonight is Bratt and Meier, priority number 1. So take them one at a time. Let's start with Bratt. What do you think is going to happen in these negotiations?
Yeah, I think a Bratt deal is going to take a little bit longer than a Meier deal. I think it sounds like it's going to go back and forth quite a bit. And I do think that they're going to get it done. I'm sorry. I do think they're going to get it done in the end, though. It just might take a bit. I'm thinking that it's going to end up somewhere around 6 years. That would be my prediction.
What do you think the number is? Like 8, 7, 9? Like
I was thinking like 7, 7.5, somewhere around there.
Okay, and then Meier. So I gotta just say, like, I'm flabbergasted that they didn't talk for today.
I heard you saying this a little bit earlier. I was listening and I was nodding along. I'm like, yeah, I was really surprised to hear that they hadn't talked yet. I thought that kind of would have been a priority because all we've been hearing is Meier priority. So yeah, I was a little surprised that they hadn't started that up yet.
If I had to re-sign my writers, if it wasn't just a perpetual contact, I would be in your DMs, your texts. Like I'd be like, "Hey, so let's talk about this contract." But Tom Fitzgerald is just breezy about the best winger that he has on the team. So,
I honestly, I wonder if he thinks that it's just not going to be too difficult to get it done. So he's kind of like, all right, we'll take care of it. But I think that it is going to be, a little bit challenging to get it done because he's such a big player. But I don't think it's going to be as difficult as the Bratt deal.
Do you see? Because here's where I disagree: is that there's this giant weight of a $10 million qualifying offer that kind of complicates this whole thing. You don't think that that's going to impact it?
I think that it could, but I think that with them knowing that he is set to become an unrestricted free agent next year, I think the big push is going to be to figure something out long term and not really focus on the qualifying offer of the 1 year and really just focusing on that long term so that they don't have to worry about next year.
So even if they get these deals done for Bratt and Meier, let's say they pay them $17 million combined.
Yeah, a lot of money. it's going to be expensive.
A lot of money. They still have $17 million to play with. Yeah. And that's with maybe if you count Nemitz as a somebody who's going to be on the roster, they have all their defense and goaltending signed. If you consider Schmid and Nemitz ready? Because I think you got Luke Hughes. I think he's ready. I think Ball is ready. You got Brendan Smith as the extra.
Yeah.
So
I think the question there is going to be: is Nemitz ready to be full time in the NHL? Is he ready? And that's going to be the question there.
So, do you think that they can make a splash still? If they resign everybody, they can't. But if they don't, do you think they're going to go after maybe a Ryan O'Reilly, a Michael Bunting, or maybe a trade candidate? Do you see them making a splash?
I don't think so. I don't see them making a big splash. I think that they're going to focus on right now, the big ones, Meier and Bratt. And then really it's going to be maybe trying to make some smaller deals, not really going after one of those big fish. I think that, like you were saying before, I think that Severson is as good as gone. I think that he's worth more than they're going to be able to pay him, as much as I'd like to see him come back. So I think he's as good as gone, and I don't see Graves coming back either. So I think it's really going to be, if Nemitz isn't ready to be in the NHL full time, it's going to be how can they fill that, maybe one last defenseman spot. I don't see them going and trying to get a big fish like Dmitry Orlov, trying to get a top 5 free agent defenseman on the market right now. I don't think that would be very wise based on, what they have already. So if they did want to go and get one more defenseman, I would think it would be someone who is maybe more on the underrated side. Maybe someone like Connor Clifton from the Bruins.
That's an interesting one.
I was thinking not necessarily specifically him, someone similar to him, but if we are looking specifically at him, he is from New Jersey, so there's always that. But I think of him because he's someone who's not going to be the most expensive guy on the market. And I think the Devils would be looking for someone who's going to be more affordable, someone who is gritty, maybe someone who can step in on a penalty kill. Because I think that one of the big issues, if there's no more Severson and no more Graves, is going to be who's going to play on that penalty kill. So that might be something that they're going to focus on. Is it a matter of, do you want someone like Doug Hamilton on the penalty kill? Is this going to be an issue? These are going to be some of the questions.
And it's funny. I wrote about this 2 weeks ago, or not even. I think that's the big deal, is that you're losing your top minutes eater on the penalty kill in Graves,
right?
And then somebody on the second line in Severson, and then
you
either got to play Brendan Smith, which you do not want to do. You don't want him on a nightly basis, or because it's just math. You have Marino, Siegenthaler, and Ball who can kill penalties.
Yeah.
And then you got Nemitz, Hughes, and Hamilton.
Right.
Which one of those are killing penalties?
That's one of my concerns with letting Graves go. It's I think that Graves and Marino play really well together. But I know that a lot of people are really excited to see Luke Hughes maybe playing on a line with Marino. So that's probably going to work out there. But that's definitely a concern with how are you going to replace those two guys and what they do in the lineup.
Yeah. So one person we haven't spoken about yet is Tomas Tatar. I think that the reason the Devils could make a splash is because of the Tatar money coming off, and if they decide not to bring him back, if they decide to bring him back, there's no more money left. That's it. That's the money.
Right.
But and that seemed like a kind of a locked-in situation because Tatar was phenomenal in the regular season, but he was terrible in the playoffs.
So bad.
So you wrote about this a little over a week ago.
I did.
You asked the question, did he cost himself an extension? You got a couple, it's been a couple days since you wrote that. Do you feel differently? And how do you feel now about Tatar?
I think I still feel pretty much the same. That is the last image in their minds, what he did in the playoffs, and ultimately he did have a great regular season. His first regular season, not as great, but second one, he did very well. He was disappointing in the playoffs, but there were some other guys who were disappointing in the playoffs or maybe didn't play up to where they were expected to be. And we still want them on the team. So it's honestly, I think that it's really going to come down to what Tatar is willing to accept. I think he might be able to get more elsewhere. I think it's going to really depend on these other moves that we've been talking about, with how much money is left, and really, with what he's willing to accept. I would like to see him back. It's always hard to see good guys go, but yeah, I do think it's. I'm still leaning towards that. I don't think he'll be back, but it's going to really depend on what those deals look like with Bratt and Meier and Eric Holla. It's really, I think that Tatar is probably going to be a later order concern after they take care of some other things.
Yeah, I think that's about where we're at. So let's have some fun. I want bold predictions. I love bold predictions, and you'll see. You haven't done. You didn't do the team article, right? I don't think you were here yet.
I did the round two, the predictions for round two. Yeah.
That one was quick. So we usually do a bigger one. And I always make people give me bold predictions. So I'm going to make you give your bold predictions here. Give me one bold prediction, one for the Devils, and then we'll do one for the NHL. But let's talk about the Devils one. What's your bold prediction for the Devils this offseason?
So I don't know how bold this is. It may not be bold because you may agree with this, but I don't think they're going to make any goalie moves. I think they're going to roll with what they have with Vanacek and Schmid. And I was listening earlier, and I agree with what you said, that I don't see them giving qualifying offer Blackwood. I think time to go. I think a change of scenery would be good for him. Maybe he'll find himself, another team. We've seen it happen before. I think
he ain't coming back. There's no world where Mackenzie Blackwood is a goalie for the Devils.
There's no room for him. There's no need for him. He's not reliable. It's time. But yeah, I think there was a big uproar among the fan base when Vanacek really struggled in the playoffs, and people are kind of like, "All right, Devils got to get another goalie." And it's like, okay, I don't think we need to full on panic. No, he didn't do well in the playoffs. We all saw that. But you also have to remember he was a big reason why they got there. And I know that it's really. What it comes down to is you have to show that you can perform in the playoffs at some point. But he had a great regular season. Looking at the numbers, and I wrote about this recently, I think it was his first season where he had like a full number one goalie, like starting full load of games, really.
He was with Samsonov in Washington the entire time. And Samsonov was the first one pick, so...
Yeah, looking at the number of games that he played each season up to now, he played maybe 10 or 11 more games than he had ever played in the season before. So I don't think that he was lacking confidence in the Stanley Cup playoffs. I don't think that he looked like he couldn't handle the moment. I think he just looked gassed, honestly, like he just ran out of gas. And my hope is that moving forward next year, now that he has done this once, that he'll be able to handle that load of a number one goalie, and that moving forward he won't look gassed in the playoffs, and hopefully be able to handle it. And then as for Schmid, he's young, he's a rookie, and I think you guys have probably talked about this on the podcast before during the playoffs, but he was thrown into just about the most difficult situation that you could be thrown into as. Not just as someone with no playoff experience, but not too much NHL experience. He wasn't with the team for the full year in the NHL. And he really kind of brought them back from not the dead, but he really helped move them along and gave them a shot to get to round two. And so I think that Schmid proved that he can handle the moment, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do in a full season in the NHL. So I don't think that they need to go and make goalie move, and I hope they don't. I want to see how these two guys do in a full season together.
It's. I mean, like it's so funny how fickle this fan base can be. Like, imagine if I told you at the beginning of the season that this team was going to beat the Rangers in round one. Like, every single fan would sign up for it, bring the team back, pay everybody whatever they want. Let's have a celebration. Lindy Ruff gets a lifetime contract, and whatever. Give Bratt the bank, and pay Timo
Which
Meier
is funny
everything that he wants.
The season started with the fire Lindy chants.
Yeah, very ironically. Sam was very big on keep Lindy around, and we almost came to blows because I think we did a podcast right after that chant. I was like saying, you can't. You lose. You're off. You're wrong. And I was wrong. Lindy did a good job this year. So and that's the starting of Schmid thing showed exactly why you want Lindy there, because he doesn't have an ego when it comes to these moves. And I think that's huge for this team. It's huge for the young guys. Okay, so there's your bold prediction on the Devils. What's your bold prediction for the NHL as a whole?
I was thinking about this recently because I did a piece where I was talking about the free agency and when it starts, and some free agents who are going to be on the market. And one of the interesting ones for me is Patrick Kane, because of age and injury. So my bold prediction would be that I think he's going to be disappointed with the contract that he ends up getting. I don't think he's going to get as big of a deal as he maybe could have gotten without the injury, which, untimely injuries happens in sports. But yeah, looking at his age, looking at the injury, I think they said he's probably going to be out 4 to 6 months, probably won't be ready for the beginning of the season. You don't know how a guy who's, I think he's 34, you don't know how he's going to heal up from that. And I think that he's going to get probably not as great of a deal as you would expect for someone who is as great of a player as Patrick Kane.
I got to tell you, I'm going to do you one better. I don't mean to one-up you, but I think opening night, I think Patrick Kane's not on a roster. I think nobody signs him until he's healthy.
Wow.
And then a playoff team, and that might be by his own doing. Maybe he was like, well, I'm injured anyway, I might as well see who's good and sign with the good team. And then they
wait around for a good deal. Yeah.
Stuff like that. And then, unless I think he'd sign with the Rangers. I think he just wants to kind of chill in New York. But I think if the Rangers are like, I don't know, bro, like your hip's broken, like, or whatever. Is it his hip? Is it his hip or his knee? I think it's his hip. Like, your hip's broken. Like, we're good. We're gonna wait. So I
do you think he would take a short-term deal?
Like how short? Like a year?
Yeah.
Like
kind of like a prove it year. Yeah.
Like who? Like honestly, like unless like a team is like Columbus, like a team that's just like apparently desperate for no reason. It's like, oh, we're getting a deal because we're getting Patrick Kane at 3 years, $15 million. It's like $5 million a year for Patrick Kane. This is great. It's like, no, you're bad at this. You need to retire. I'm so like appalled at that Blue Jackets trade. Like, how are you just man? I mean, I'm not appalled. I'm excited because the Blue Jackets are gonna suck for a while.
Yeah,
but
it's always great when you see these moves and they're not your team.
Yeah, I was sad because the Flyers did pretty well, but I was happy because the Blue Jackets are. I mean, Johnny Hockey. He's so happy they called. So happy. Now he gets to play for Mike Babcock, and they didn't get Connor Bedard, and now they get, their saving grace is Ivan Provorov. What a disgrace. But anyway,
I think that we got the better Johnny Hockey out of the two. John Marino.
Yeah, I think we're in good shape. But Marci Rubin, take a second. Let us know what's coming up for you on pucksandpitchforks.com and Fansided NHL. Let us know what you're working on right now.
Yeah, right now I'm working on for Fansided NHL. I'm working on just some NHL rumors. So I'm putting together some of the latest rumors. Gonna going to dive into those and probably do some more of those throughout the off season. And I'm excited to keep writing for all three of the pages that I'm working on.
You got an idea for Pucks and Pitchforks yet, or are you still mustering something up?
Still mustering. Waiting to see what exciting things are coming up. I think that there'll probably be some exciting things to write about with Timo Meier and Jesper Bratt coming up.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. Well, Marci Rubin, new Pucks and Pitchforks writer, thanks for coming on. Thanks for spending some time with us. Check her out at fansided.com/NHL and also at pucksandpitchforks.com. Marci, thanks for spending some time with us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me on. This is great.
Thanks, Marci. That is Marci Rubin.
Bye.
pucksandpitchforks.com. You've got
listen.
You got a great staff going, Nick.
Sam, you always set yourself up for this, and you almost beg me to ask you, what are you doing? Come on back, write something. What are you doing?
I'm a terrible writer.
You're a good writer. You just suck at continuing writing.
You run out of ideas, all that kind of stuff. It takes time.
Sam, I've written 20 to 30 articles every month for 6 years.
Okay, I'll write
You are
something.
preaching to the wrong choir here.
I'll write something. You should get Beer Baron to write for pucksandpitchforks.com.
Bring him on. Let's go. Come on,
Beer
Baron.
Baron doesn't know how to write. He does finger painting.
I will turn Sam. I can turn finger painting into a 100,000 view post.
Oh, okay. All right.
I will say I gotta celebrate a little bit.
Oh,
did we celebrate last podcast? No, we didn't, because it was the end of the month, right? The 31st was last week.
Yep.
Sam, we gotta celebrate.
All right, let's celebrate.
Pucks and Pitchforks broke its views record in May 2023. 570,000 views last month.
Wow.
We crushed it. Yeah, so it was the end of the playoffs talk. It was the end of the season talk. It was the start of the offseason talk. There's a lot of huge pieces from this last week. Some of the big ones. Sam, I did it. I talked about the Devils and the Quinn Hughes dream dying. It's over. Quinn Hughes will never be a New Jersey Devil during this contract. The dream is dead. No more fake trades. No more talking about it. We just have to let it go. I also talked about I did an article that's a big information. These are my plugs, by the way, so you can get the music going whenever you feel fit. But I wrote a piece, and this was kind of fun. I went through to see which players are losing waiver exempt status, right? And that makes things a little uncomfortable, right? Because you either put them on the NHL roster or you risk losing them for nothing. And there's some interesting names on there. There's some not interesting names, like Dawson Mercer is losing it. He was gonna make the team, but what if I told you Tyce Thompson was losing it? Fitzgerald loves Tyce Thompson, but he hasn't been good enough to make the NHL roster. What do you do with that? Do you risk losing him? Somebody's going to pick him up because he's Tage Thompson's brother. Strictly because of that, somebody will give him a shot. But I'm curious, Sam. Curious what's going to happen with some of those players. There's other really interesting players that are losing waiver exempt status this year. David Williams he's been writing a series on realistic trade targets. He did one on the Pacific Division, and then he just did one on the Central Division. We talked about the realistic scenarios for the Timo Meier negotiations. I gotta call myself out. I didn't realize that team arbitration could lower a qualifying offer. I was not aware of that rule, so I gotta fix a mistake in that article. But did you know that, Sam?
No, I didn't know that.
That's the weirdest rule. The players are so dumb. Why would you do this to yourself? So basically, if the Devils take Meier to arbitration, they could argue that he only deserves $8.5 million. Which, like, at that point,
well, then you can just give the Devils the bird at that point, and then.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, like, if you're Meier, you're never signing long term.
Yeah.
So I still think the Devils aren't going to do it.
I'm still on the fence about this whole trade. He better sign for 8 years. Hopefully, Tom.
If he signs for 5 years, it's still a great trade.
Oh yeah. Well, what I mean is long term. You know.
Yeah. Oh, but I had a little fun, Sam. I wrote about what if Johnny Gaudreau chose the Devils over the Blue Jackets, and did how it changed everybody's life. And I'll tell you this, Sam. I'll give you a spoiler. The Devils are less happy, but Johnny is more happy. You want to know why? I'll give you another spoiler. The one reason why, because you don't get John Marino if you get Johnny Hockey. And you probably don't get Timo Meier either. And you definitely don't get Andre Palat. I think a lot of people could live without Palat, but you don't get John Marino. You're not, like, you don't have the money to do it.
Yep.
They'll find somebody else to take John Marino's contract. So, and then you're probably re-signing Damon Severson for probably like $6 million a year. There's a lot of dominoes in the article. Go check it out, pucksandpitchforks.com. And we're going to be writing this week. I can't promise anything because I have a baby and the baby cries. So, Jersey Joe did write a lineup projections today, so that's on the website. And then Charlie Borges Jr. wrote a Taylor Hall reacquisition argument. So that's going up in the morning.
Wow, I can't wait to read that article. Also, I want to brag as well, because I forgot to brag at the end of the month. This podcast in the month of May broke the all-time record monthly amount of downloads. The previous month was April, which was a record, but now May is a record. And the May in 2023, we did nearly 50,000 downloads during that whole playoff run. Just want to thank all of you fans. I mean, that was a heck of a run on May 1st when the Devils beat the New York Rangers at Game 7. That was an amazing, amazing podcast afterwards. So thank you to everybody for tuning in. We'll be dropping the podcast at midnight, and also go to pucksandpitchforks.com tomorrow morning, or if you want to burn some time at work and milk the clock around 12 o'clock. 12 o'clock Eastern. That's where you go on, on pucksandpitchforks.com. R. Nunez says, congrats to Nick and Sam on breaking records. Thank you, R. Nunez. Thank you to everybody. Just remember, we're going to have a draft party at Enzo's. Yes, at Enzo's in Hackettstown, New Jersey, off of Route 57. Yes, a draft party. Did you know about this, Nick? We better talk about it off air.
Okay.
Yeah.
We don't have a draft pick.
Doesn't matter. We're going to have some drafts at Enzo's.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't invited. That's fine.
No, you were definitely invited. You were definitely invited. You were definitely invited.
Pshaw.
I figured that, give you the option to do it virtually since you've got a good excuse now.
It's fair.
Yeah. Beer Baron's going to be in the Bahamas, by the way. Or somewhere on a cruise ship. Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. All right. I want to thank all those tuning in. Thank you very much. Again, go to pucksandpitchforks.com. Big thank you to Marci Rubin and Jackie Spiegel for coming on. We'll see you next week. Till next time, let's go Devils.